am. Hey, everybody. Medium Brandon Ross, welcome back. I have several messages for you. Let's pay attention now. Um, Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys are doing well. I am back. I am back in upstate New York. Welcome to the cold again. I heard they had fantastic weather while I was away. And of course, I'm, skipping away here. Um, but I'm seeing you guys tune in. Thanks so much for being a part of my journey. I got a couple of things coming up that'll be fun, that'll be adventurous, that'll be all that other stuff. Um, no, it is not the Gremlins. I actually had to. We have the sound and freezing, of course. All right. Well, hopefully, it looks like I'm okay here, and it also looks like I'm not freezing anymore because I'm letting all the other beard come in. Look at this, all the other beard come in. But anyways, we're going to have a good time here today. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Energy Report. We're going to take a look at the world at large. We're also going to take a look at the upcoming solar um, eclipse coming up here on the 29th. It is an interesting thing. Yeah, so sorry that I had a little bit of time off here. Went down to Florida, took my dad. We went on a whirlwind tour. As many of you know, he's ex-Navy. So we went down to Key West to see where he was stationed. It's not really there anymore. They've changed a lot in 50 years. Um, and I knew we were in trouble when he said, "Yeah, I don't remember that Taco Bell being here." And I'm like, "Dad, that's because okay." Saw a handful of baseball games. The Twins were 0-3 during those games. Thank you very much. Thanks so much for being here. Um, had a great time. Saw friends, had laughter. Um, Took Dad to Epcot. First time he had been to a Disney place. We went down to Key West, like I said. Also, just spent time together. Just talked. Just talked and talked and talked and talked. And it was one of those things that it's the trip he always wanted. So we were going to do that. And then, of course, in the last couple of days, I started getting this chest thing, and then I lose my voice. And of course, I don't know when to quit, so I start right in with a whole plethora of shit to do, because that's what I do. Oh, don't swear in the first 10 minutes, Brandon. A whole bunch of stuff to do. Push me down in the algorithms. I'll give you a reason to push me down in the algorithms. But I've got to tell you a couple of experiences that I had down in Florida. And I'm always taking the pulse on things. Now, I was on the West Coast. From, like I said, got down to Key West, but, stationed in Fort Myers there for a few days, 5 to be exact. And then we moved up towards Clearwater. Had met some great people down there. First of all, shout out to Mystic Sisters and Port Charlotte. You should go to their Facebook. You should like their page. They've got a really cool, nice shop there. Their back room where they hold their events, super nice. Super flow there. Jen and her team, pretty fantastic. And then up in Palm Harbor, I got to meet Alessa and her crew there. Again, really two completely different vibes, by the way, but really great people. Just I met so many really great people. Also, I know that there's a few stalkers, that came to see me down there, so I appreciate you guys. I'm glad you guys are tuning in. It is definitely a great way to be away from things. It was, the house that we stayed in down in Fort Myers with some friends was great because it's handicap accessible. It was fantastic. The hotels, though, throughout the rest of Florida can kind of suck ass. They don't really know what hospitality is, and I'm not really sure they know how to identify bed bugs, but I did. Had a near miss with that one. And listen, it is what it is. I know that area gets ravished by hurricanes every year in some capacity or another. So I know it's tough to kind of keep up with it, but it's like, man, oh man, there were some rough stops along the tour, man. But generally, it was a great time. Epcot didn't disappoint. It was my dad's tour around the world. There is still a waitress in Germany that just, I want to apologize now. There were some off-color things said. There was some beer consumed. And he's only got one leg. so he's probably can't make good on any of the things that he said. But that being said, the strudel. Thank you for your strudel. There's a lot of sideways things we can go with on this one. But seeing Illuminations at the end of the night was kind of my goal with that, with him, along with seeing the different places, and we just loved it. And I'm not gonna lie, I totally got a scooter along with my dad. I have no problem admitting that I had that. For two reasons. One, it was a day before a show, and I have to really kind of conserve energy, like as I kind of go along, like, in other words, the day of a show is not leg day. You can't like work out when you're connecting with spirit. But the day before, you don't want to overdo it. And if I had to walk that, I would have overdone it. So, that's one part of it. The other part of it is my dad has reckless abandon, and being able to keep up with him would have been a thing. So there's that. We did go on one ride that we went on Soarin', and if you're familiar with Disney and Epcot, Soarin' is the one where you kind of sit in the seat and they lift you up and you go into this, 180 thing. And my dad just hooted and hollered the whole time. He goes, "This is great." He goes, "I'm not sure it's worth 50 minutes of waiting, but, all right, Dad." It was, it was something that was very much a great, a great thing for me. It was a great thing for my dad. And I think a lot of the times we have trouble in this life thinking that we're always like waiting for the other shoe to drop, or we're waiting for other things to happen, and we worry about them. And there's a lot of things to worry about with my parents and my dad and whatever, but we didn't care. We just went and did it. And there were times where he said, "Listen, I gotta sit this one out." Okay. We went in with the flexibility of being able to say, like, let's not push this. I mean, even when we went to Disney, we didn't mess around. Like, we were on the highway, we were ready to go. And then when we got there, it was like, okay, well, we had to do a couple of maneuvering things for the rides and whatever. And we just took our time. He's like, "Yeah, I'm kind of hungry." And I go, "Well, that wasn't the plan, but okay." And I remember going there, in previous times going, "Oh no, we've got the schedule. We've got to make the most of our time here." And I threw all that crap out the window. And we took a lot of detours. And because of that, we saw a lot of great things. Some of it was the biggest ball of string and, other stuff like that. We saw an amazing sunset off of Honeyboon Beach. We met a couple of really great friends down there, Susie and Matthew. And they're like, "We check out the sunset every chance we get. Follow us. We got a pass." And they got us on there. And we watched the sunset. And it was amazing. It was beautiful. My Ted talked through the entire thing, like he's going to see 1,000 more of these. So I love that about there. The way that these things, kind of go, I had to be engaged. I had to be, and when I say engaged, it's like my dad was my focus. I mean, I saw a lot of great people, but it was like, "Hey guys, here's my dad." Yeah, sure, we can get alligator bites. By the way, alligator kind of sucks. It's not really good. I don't care what kind of sugar coat cheese shit you put on it. Alligator just doesn't taste good. Sorry. There, I said it, Florida. It's like your politics. It looks good on the outside, like it looks like it's engaging, and then you take a bite of it and you're like, this is just not even real. And we had one completely disrespectful moment. And by the way, I don't want this to slight anything else. We had a fantastic time. I do want to tell you about going down to Key West. And, my dad was stationed there for a few years. We met up with one of his classmates from his sonar school. And sonar school in the Navy, like, you kind of got to be handpicked, and you kind of got to, like, you got to know your stuff. Like, you got to be technically driven. Yeah, my dad had a certain aptitude for it, and this other guy who they were all roommates and whatever. And my dad and this other fellow, they just hit it off. They were just friends, and they stayed friends for 50 years, although they hadn't seen each other in 50 years, not since he had left the Navy. Of course, everybody's blaming me for that, but it wasn't me, it was my mom. Anyways, he asked me, I'm 6 months old, and he goes, should I re-enlist? I'm like, "Dad, you do whatever it is that you want." Dad, I think you should do whatever would make you happy. And if this means that you're going to travel the world and we would have lived in, and I would have grown up in San Diego instead of upstate New York, I might have said, okay. Anyways, um, his good friend, and they stayed friends, they stayed in contact, but they lost contact probably in the 80s into the 90s, and then the internet came around, and they have alumni things that you can look into, certain classes of people and how to reach out to them. And if you want to be reached, you can be reached. If you don't, you don't. But Ed was one of those guys that did it. And Ed was a super interesting dude because Ed tried to recruit my dad over and over again. Like, even when he was leaving, he's like, you got to come with me. Just join my team. We're going to be doing great things. You're a good guy. I want to take care of you. I don't care what your rank is. We'll find a place for you, whatever. And Ed really, like, shot up the ranks. Like, he was a captain in no time. And he had a lot of technical background. And as we're sitting there, as they're swapping stories back and forth, and they're like, remember that night in Boca Chica? Ah! Two of my dad's shaking his leg. He goes, I'd have given up this leg for her. That kind of crap. It was hysterical. Yeah, we're there in an old country buffet, and the two of them are just, like, yucking it up like a couple of, Sheckies from 1968. Anyways, so they're having this great time, and they're talking about it, and then it's talking about the other experiences. Well, I went on, I got certain degrees, and the Navy kept saying, we really like you, we're gonna send you to this school, that school, and whatever. And he was all Navy educated, and he ended up being an executive for I think 3 years at the Panama Canal. And here was this guy who my dad's known forever, and my dad was like, I had no idea. He goes, what do you mean you're at the Panama Canal? I go, oh, yeah, I was at the Panama Canal. I was an executive officer there. I was the one, making the decisions. How are we going to do this? What are we going to clean? Blah, blah, blah. And I couldn't help but ask, because you know me. And I'm like, hey, I go, so what do you think about the current political stuff going on right now? He goes, let me tell you something. I'm going to tell you that China was not running the Panama Canal. You know how I know that? Because I was running the damn thing for 3 years. Like, I was the one that was in charge of it. And I'm telling you, there wasn't a single Chinese person around. There wasn't another nationality in there. We had good working relationships with Britain and Brazil and the Netherlands and the UK and even China. We had good relations with all of these people, and we were helping them manage the Suez Canal. We had the military; they had the land. It was a perfect relationship for a really, really, really long time. And in '99, it started to flip over and all this other stuff, and it just became a whole conversation of, first of all, you don't even know the people that you know, and I don't think it was negligent. It was just, my dad wasn't like, Ed was not the type of guy that would be like boastful to be like, oh yeah, and I did this and I did this and I stormed this beachhead and I did this, that, and the other thing. Um, he was very much he's very much a meek and mild leader, and he knew exactly who he is. He's down to earth. He's the type of leadership you want in military. He understood the rules, and he understood where to break them. Um, and of course they're reminiscing. And my dad had told me the story, but hearing somebody else reflect on the story, it did two things. One, and I'll tell the story in a second. But one, it gave validation to the craziness that my dad's life has been. Like, it's just the situations he got in. Um, and then two, to hear someone else ruminate on an insane thing. So my dad had a bestie, a best friend in the Navy. His name was Ron. And Ron was not wrapped too tight. Ron was from Oklahoma. And he had ties to Oklahoma and Tennessee. And Ron was one of those guys that would just be like, well, you didn't say this, so I did that. Like, he's one of those guys that, like, well, if you didn't tell me exactly what to do, then I'm going to do what I want to do. He just had one of those things that kind of pushed him in a different way. But he was a troublemaker in a good way, traditionally. So he my dad and Ron were always paired up, and they would have shore patrol together, and they had they had to do shore patrol on days where, like, there was a plane crash and they had to pick up people from the ground. Like, I mean, they really had some rough assignments there. I told you a story to tell you this one. So Ron, they would do shore patrols. So they go up and down the shore and, and whatnot. And he comes across a bomb. He comes across a grenade dropped bomb, torpedo looking thing. So Ron, in his infinite wisdom, looks at it and says, this might need to be detonated. So he puts it in his truck, his Jeep, with my dad. And my dad's just like, we can just tell him where it is. And Ron goes, no, they didn't tell us to do that. They told us that we need to inform them right away of the bomb. And he goes, yeah, notice how they didn't say put it in your Jeep and drive up to it. So Ron shows up, and of course, they have the OOD, the officer of the day, who's kind of, let me translate, the shithead that has to pull the night shift is basically the OOD. And Ron says, so what are we supposed to do if we ever find an undetonated bomb? And they said, well, we need to call this and blah, 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 blah. He picks it up and puts it on the OOD's desk and says, well, you might want to call him now. Well, this shut down the base. There was a live bomb on base. There was an unauthorized whatever, and everybody gets in trouble. My dad's like, "What are you doing? Like, what are you doing?" And Ron always kind of worked alone. He always said, this isn't Nate, it's me." But hearing the guy who was a little more senior at that point hear how crazy Ron was, and just verifying how crazy not only that story is, but also how much he was legitimately one of those guys that like just was a bullshitter. He was like the original bullshitter. And I think the best part about this is that somebody else kind of learned and loved the way that my dad did the military and the Navy. And, that, gosh, there's 100 other stories that are connected to this. But it was an amazing adventure for my dad to even recap this and hear it. And hearing that, I mean, it was one thing after another that were just amazing. I mean, we laughed the entire time, seeing our friends. Lauren and Carolyn down there was just, I mean, we just laughed. It was just fun. And seeing baseball games and then seeing his friend Dave, who he was in choir with, 15 years ago. And the two of them used to be troublemakers all the time in choir. And, and then, seeing an aunt that we actually hadn't seen in, 35 years. It was... lets you got to remember that your parents led a life. And they led a life that they did the best they could with what they had all the time. And when you look at the spreadsheet and you look at the account balance, you go, well, they didn't make a lot of money, or they didn't have a lot for them, or they had to pour it back into the family business or whatever. But then you hear these stories about the most cockamamie stuff that they pulled off and the adventures that they had. And it was funny. Ed even said, he goes, Nate wasn't a teetotaler, but I never remember him getting drunk. He was the most responsible soldier, which is why he always got all the assignments. And that's the stuff that my dad used to say. He'd be like, oh yeah, I was the first one up. I was the first one clean cut. I was the first one, whatever. And, I think he told me those things because he, wanted me to follow in those footsteps or something. But I don't think that was ever his want or goal. But it was more of like, just to let you know I'm something. Like, you might have a book and a YouTube channel and travel the world. But, I got my shit too. And I was okay with that. Like, I was okay. I love seeing that stuff up front. And one of the other stories that he told that I think is, and by the way, this is going to be a book. It's absolutely going to be a book. And it's, and speaking of which, the books are going to come flying. April 11th, It looks like, funny you should say, that's going to be re-released. If you have already ordered your book and your t-shirt, those are being ordered by the end of the week. And we're going to get those out to you. Funny you should say that. We're going to go right back out on tour again late April. I'm going to show you a couple of dates here. The poetry book is going to be out here this summer. And then I have decided that the release date for the Merkable Chronicles will be 8/8. I am in the final stretches of those stories. I'm just working out the astrology, making sure it's all good to go. But I've already started on 2 other stories. Like, it's just how I roll. You are going to love these characters. I'm in love with the characters I'm creating, which is a sign of a good story for an author to be like, I kind of like this one. And the themes and the whatever, and there's just got project after project rolling and getting my feet wet again. But that respite of those 8 days with my dad were really important because it's the vacation he always wanted. And he was walking 6 miles a day when he slipped and broke his ankle, and it just went sideways from there. He didn't get that chance. He didn't have that chance. He takes care of himself and everything else. And the other story, I'm going to save it for the book, but it's a great one. And basically, in a nutshell, he ends up in the back of a limo with an oil baron, and he's actually a well-known oil baron. He just didn't know who the hell it was at the time. And I said, this is your thank you. And he goes, what are you thanking me for? And I go, because you quit smoking. He goes, oh God, I did that 30 years ago. And I go, you're right, and you're here because of it. So everything has its rewards. And at the time when I was a 22-year-old kid, when he was quitting smoking, I couldn't take him on a trip. I couldn't give him a reward, and it certainly wasn't a position he was in to do anything else. But you remember those things, right? You remember those things that he, it was a sacrifice for him to quit that. So that's my way of saying thanks, Dad, for being selfless in that way. And, be able to just have that time that he needed. And I think it's super important. And I'm going to encourage everybody, it's not too late. I mean, listen, my dad's in the capacity that he's in, and we worked within it. And, rock and roll. Yeah, Jim, I appreciate that, and I can't wait to connect with you. By the way, I smiled when I looked at it. Phoenix, you might not be able to send me a message. We'll pull it together. I might have needed a vacation, but that's not why. I mean, it was go. I slept until 11 o'clock today, which is, I don't do that usually. What happened here? It didn't upload. Well, just give me just a second here. There we go. Let's take a look at this. Let me tell you about a couple of things coming up. We're going to talk about the eclipse coming up. I want to talk especially about the house it's happening in for us. Is it rocking and rolling here, right? Independent bookstore days. By the way, get out to your local independent booksellers if you have one locally. And I'm going to make this appeal out to everybody because I know I talk to a lot of people from across the country and even across the world. If you know a small bookseller, an independent house, maybe have some sort of tie to it, can you send me a message with their name and maybe include them? I want to actually get this book out to, it's going to be on all of the distributing factors of small bookstores. Whereas the other publishing house that had me was just, they didn't do a good job at all. So I'm going to take the reins and do this. I want to get this into as many small bookshops as I can. And I want to be able to visit and tour. And by the way, the chances of, if you get this book into your bookshop, increases your chances of me coming to your town, just to let you know. Want to be able to connect with them and get the book in there. And by the way, it might only sell a handful of books, but that's okay. I think that the small movement is the big movement right now. And on this day, I'm going to be at a local shop called Mocha Lisa's. It's a fun space. They've had to move a couple of times, but now they're settled. On that day, I'm going to be doing a book signing from 11 to 12:30. I'm also going to have the T-shirt as well. You can check out what the T-shirt looks like on the website on tbrennerross.com. And then they have various authors throughout the day, so buy a couple of books while you're there. These small bookshops, that's what makes them go, right? Get a cup of coffee, get a book. Get a cup of coffee, get a book. Oh, is that a Danish? You see what I'm doing now, right? Then I've got a message circle at 5 o'clock. It is the first time I've been back there in 6 years. I had done a show there when it was actually a previous owner, but the current owner was somehow involved with it at this point. But I had sold out that show, got months. And by the way, it was the last non-funny you should say that I ever did. And true story, I was doing this meditation and messages. And sure as shit, all of a sudden there were like 5 mediums we're going to do a meditation and messages. What a great idea. And I'm like, you're going to take my idea. I'm going to make something you can't duplicate. And that's how Funny You Should Say That came about. Guess what? You don't hear any mediums saying, Funny You Should Say That, right? It was the last non-funny you should say that. But it's great to be back there. The current owners, Roland and Eric, I think it is, or Alyssa, I get that wrong. Great people, down to earth, super friendly to authors. They've been great to any of our authors. So this is my way of thanking them. It's actually the only show that I have in upstate New York or at least in the Capital District, until, well, fall, really. And then, of course, in Austin, I just want to run this down. I'm going to be there not only on May 1st, I'm going to be doing sound healing on May 2nd, and then I'm going to be doing a live podcast, just like this, on May the 3rd. We're actually working out some of the logistics right now. We're getting our guests lined up. You're going to want to tune in, and if you're in the Austin area, you can come and hang out with me for a day and watch me do this stuff. We are going to pull up some audience members. We're going to have a little bit of an extended time. We're actually going to be launching our More Than a Medium media network while I'm there. Yeah, we're also doing the sound healing as well. That is going to be just a walk-in fee. I'm going to advertise it, but whatever. They had some changes with some of their scheduling, and it works out pretty well. And listen, I love to do this work, and I love to meet people, and this is a great space. And I'm super excited about continuing a relationship with them. I'm living the dream. That's kind of what I'm doing over here. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a heads up. So let's get to some of the energy stuff right now. I do want to share with you kind of the climate. And I had one experience while I was down there that was very much your atypical, just kind of bohunk right-wing MAGA shit. And listen, it is definitely one of those things that were unnecessary. My dad and I went to this place in Tarpon Springs, and it's one of those places that it's a Greek village, basically. And the way my dad has to kind of travel, like we got to park close. So we strolled around, we found the right thing. And the way that I can describe this place, it's like an outdoor, indoor diner. It's a Greek diner. It's super great staff there. Their food is fun. The 10 out of 10 while I was down there. I'm a bit of a foodie, if you will. And with that in mind, it's kind of like it's one of those things that, like, it's an experience. And you have to sit like right on top of people, and that's part of the experience. And the reason why I'm bringing up this story is because my dad and I were talking about something of how how my one of our relatives were reacting to some of the Trump stuff and how it's kind of caused this division. We weren't actually pro anything. We were just talking about how one set of people are very much pro, some people are very much anti. And it's not a matter of which side we were on. And my dad and I are sitting in a seat like this. And the other person literally, like I could reach across to the person. Well, we just happened to be talking about it. And this guy sits back in his fucking cowboy hat and just starts spouting things. Well, I think anybody who touches a Tesla should be shot in the fucking head. And I look at my dad, and my dad just goes, "Oh, really?" I eventually yielded, however. I just turned to him and said, "Nobody asked. Nobody asked you." And he goes, "Well, I'm just telling you what I think. I can say whatever I want." I said, "You sure can, but nobody asked you." The woman he was with slowly kind of slinked under the table because he was just on this diatribe. And everybody in the restaurant was kind of like, "What is this asshat?" Meanwhile, I'm thoroughly enjoying the whipped feta spread. That's all I'm going to say. With fresh pita. This part right here, mostly feta. He, the point of me saying this and bringing this up is I'm realizing that MAGA was really, how do I want to say this? They've been given marching orders to be disruptive. And that's the only game they have is disruption. Dismantle this, audit that, cancel this, cancel that, all of these things. And we figured them out. Like it didn't take a rocket surgeon to figure this out. And one of the things that I recognized, and I fought hard to just not say that there is an intelligence barrier to who would fall for the shit. And there is an education thing. There is absolutely an education thing. You can tell me how educated you are without a degree. And I think that there are some very smart people without degrees. Don't get me wrong. But there is a sincere difference between people that are educated. And educated doesn't always mean that you finish a degree. Educated often means that you're willing to educate yourself, willing to pull back the layers, pulling back the idea that if you present your want and will into the world, if it's for good, it's good. Um, that person didn't have any good intention. He wasn't trying to forward an agenda. He was trying to forward an agenda, but he was not trying to forward knowledge. Um, there, I'm looking to see what's full and what's not. Um, his only agenda was to create disruption. Like that was it. Like there was no reason for him to be like that. There was no reason for him to be this like wandering asshat. Like it's almost like he was only going to thrive if he could find somebody to disrupt. Like I'm some sort of catch. Like, oh, I got a snowflake. And then he was like, well, I got a gun in my truck. Like he just starts spouting stuff. And I said, and I say to my dad, I'm like, you know what the danger is? I think the Democrats don't own guns. They think that this is just a one note thing. And my dad's like, well, I think we should kind of drop this because he dealt with Ron back in the day, so I'm kind of fun. I'm fun for a whole other set of reasons, right? Um, he definitely had some. I mean, there were just some mental issues with him, like flat out mental issues The guy was absolutely like he was like anger driven. And that's the thing that I'm finding. And how we in part of the energy report here is we have to recognize that what we're dealing with is an irrational force. It is the things that they get points for are the things that we're like, really? Like what are we doing here? And I worked really hard to be like, well, it's not about education. It kind of is. Because you need to be educated in order to say, like, listen, I'm not going to believe everything I'm going to see. Or I'm going to want to be a part of this in a way that will make sense. Like, I want to be part of a dialogue. These people are just pissed. They're pissed that their dad didn't get them a pony. They're pissed that, women talk back. They're pissed that, money does go into the pot and help out everybody. They want to pick and choose where that money goes to. And so long as we have that ego, and by the way, we have ego from people that, and I think we've all kind of had that where you're like, is this really what we're spending our money on? We have a social responsibility to provide. We took it on a global scale. We took it on a local scale. We have lost our identity with that. Globally, we look like idiots right now. We genuinely look like idiots. When I was at Epcot, I got into a conversation with a man from England, and he said, everybody told me not to come to America right now. And I'm like, why is that? And he goes, well, because you don't know when I'm going to be exported or detained or, whatever. And I go, is it really that bad? He goes, well, I found out that it wasn't that bad. But the world perception is the United States is a parasite now. And I went, wow, a parasite. Let that sink in, right? And when you talk to people outside of this, and I talk to a lot of Canadians, nicest people on, like, they're not, come on, guys, like, really, Canada? We're picking a fight with Canada? They're going to be the 51st state? If Canada becomes the 51st state, I'm becoming Canada. I'm becoming Canadian. I'm just letting you know. And this isn't like some sort of like famous people saying I don't want to deal with this anymore. I am absolutely siding with Canada. I saw somebody post the other day, that if you were supporting Zelensky, you supported war. And I'm just like, how myopic is our 3-year window that you don't remember that Zelensky and Ukraine didn't do a goddamn thing to promote this war? And you can say, well, they broke a treaty and they whatever. No. That is not war driven. That is not an act of war. They weren't taking over pipelines. They weren't taking over land. They weren't denouncing Crimea, although they did, right? But for the love of Pete, you mean to tell me that you're a warmonger if you're supporting Ukraine? That is such a warped, uneducated dialogue that I can't work with that. I can't work with the idea that Ukraine is not the one that shot the bombs. Russia is the one that invaded Ukraine, period. End of conversation. Anything else is gaslit. But it's that gaslight of, well, they had a reason to. Do you remember the Nazis that were in Ukraine? Whatever happened to that? Did they root them out? The answer to that is it was completely 100% bullshit, and it's just the narrative that Putin spews, right? If you follow the timeline, I was recently sent the timeline of Trump and Russia. Trump has been compromised since 1987, since his first bankruptcy. He has owed Russia everything under the sun. And guess what? They told him, if you can grift the shit out of this from day one, let us get there. Donald Trump leaves office in 43 days later, Russia invades Ukraine under Biden. And listen, that was all by design. All of that was by design. Putin is a puppet master. And listen, I've been trying to find the actual quatrain, and I know I've read it. I just haven't had more than 10 minutes to rub together. But Nostradamus, and I think I'm going to do another. I think I'm going to do a Nostradamus update. Those of you that have seen my older one that came out about 2 years ago, it was something that was inspired that Penny and I were talking about something. And by the way, Penny and I are going to be getting back together here in a couple of weeks. Don't you worry, she's not too far off the radar. Um, and we're going to have an opportunity to, kind of talk about this stuff. But the Nostradamus thing, Ukraine provides a very kind of interesting problem for both of us. And Nostradamus pointed this out, that there would be an unlikely alliance between the bear and the eagle, which is Russia and the United States, against the dragon, which is China. And if you told me 10 years ago that Russia and the U.S. were going to get together on something, I mean, we were friendly. Putin's not friendly, but we've had friendly terms, and nobody's really kind of overstepped their bounds too much. But in the scheme of things, nobody would have said, "Oh yeah, Russia and the United States are going to get together and just get into pick a fight with China." Now I'm going to tell you it's likely. Now I'm going to tell you that the odds of this happening are there. And by the way, it is devastation. It ain't good when that goes down. So this unlikely alliance is basically Trump's compromise. Donald Trump. I mean, the reason why you pull a credit report, by the way, has anybody pulled Trump's credit report? Just out of curiosity. But this is the reason why you pull credit reports on people that are going to run your company. You don't want to see somebody at 420. See what he did there? You want to see somebody in the 800s. You want to see somebody that can take care of their own business on the regular, that don't live outside their means, that don't take risks that they can't overcome. You don't want to see people that can't get their own act together before they run your own company, right? And we don't have checks and balances. We didn't even check the voting booths, guys. Let that sink in. Forget about taking his credit report. We didn't even check the voting machines. Yeah. There's some real stuff here. So anyways, let's get back to the news here. Let's kind of look at the here we go. Here we are. Look at that. I'm right over my website, tbrandruss.com. Let's talk about extortion. Let's talk about the extortion of the Paul Weiss, Rifkin, Wharton, and Garrison law firm. Donald Trump basically issued an executive order to basically try and bury this law firm, right? And this law firm has done so many good things. They've also been on the front line of a lot of different legal precedences, and they are basically regarded in very high regard. They have produced a handful of federal judges. They have been on the cutting edge of Manhattan law, which is a big deal. A lot of real estate deals, a lot of IP, a lot of intellectual property stuff. And here's Donald Trump basically saying, we're going to use this entire department to go after you guys. And guess what? Can you guess what? Well, he shook him down, and he basically copped a plea deal with them, which the entire law industry is like up in arms about this, because they're like, why did you bend to this asshole? And then meanwhile, Trump thinks that he's hot shit because he's able to kind of extort from them now. But it was extortion. It wasn't legal. He literally, all of the things that they say they weren't going to do, they literally just did. He is weaponizing the Department of the Attorney General. He is weaponizing this. And guess what? This is the type of thing where, Paul Rifkin Garrison are going to lose from their $40 million payout that they just gave him. And by the way, nobody is saying where that money's going to. You see what happens? Oh, and by the way, nobody will take a look at what happened with that because he fired all the solicitor generals. Are you seeing kind of how it ends? Right? But I'll tell you, law firms like this are going to circle the wagons and then they're going to crush him. They will crush him in office, they will crush him out of office. They kind of know where his bodies are buried. And because of that, they've been very contingent. And I'm telling you, they're organizing this. I think, how do I want to say this? I think he finally kicked a bee's hive that will go after him again. He's thinking of this as and by the way, the reason why he went after them is because they were part of the Manhattan District Attorney investigation. It's retribution. It is 100% retribution. There is no way in hell any of this isn't his own mindset of saying, I want to go after all the people that went after me. It's revenge. It is 100% revenge. Donald Trump is a child. I will say it again. He is an emotionally stunted man that acts like a certain way, like he's a big guy. By the way, they're going to push, one of my predictions in this is they're going to push all of the Epstein file shit again. Every single, by the way, we learned virtually nothing in the last release. You know, they might have added, they added on victims is what they did. Like they think that they're so like, oh, we're so transparent. They just expose victims. Like how shitty is that? Oh yeah, they're pieces of shit. So it's what they do, right? Pam Bondi is just going to do whatever it is that Donald Trump tells her to do, like a good woman, according to Donald Trump. So long as you have loyalty here. They're going to come out with another set and another set. And guess what? And why are they doing the slow roll? Because they have to have it in their back pocket ready to go for whenever a distraction is needed, right? So when these next ones come out, and there'll be some celebrity names on them. And by the way, you will literally learn nothing from them. You will learn nothing from these releases. You might get one additional, you might find out that David Copperfield went there once. Like, up here once, like, or like, who cares? Who cares? That was an awful moment in history, and we'll never get to the bottom of it because they like to play charades, just like they did with 9/11. We never got to the bottom of 9/11 because they got rid of all the evidence. We'll never get to the bottom of this election because they got rid of all the voting machines. They are full of shit from cover to cover, guys. Energetically, they are shit. But these actions that you're seeing right now by going after prominent law firms is his way of trying to weaken the base so he can pull off the biggest grift and heist in the history of everything. This is Ocean's 11. Like, don't think that this is anything but Ocean's 11. Because let's take a look at this. Anybody else see this leaked video about JD Vance? And I'll kind of paraphrase this. He basically said Elon Musk is a cosplay of an American hero. I sat there and I went, wow, that's really funny. It's really got some legs. I'm also here to tell you that in due diligence, because I'm an educated person and I care enough about my country that I chose to... oh, look at that. There's half a brain. I chose to do a little bit of research and I realized that it was false. And I realized that it was not accurate and it wasn't appropriate, right? It's false. It was definitely something that was sewn together by somebody that wanted to deep fake it. They used a bunch of clips from JD Vance to kind of frame it like he was talking about Elon. So this is false. So, you know, as much as I'm sure that there is some dissent about Elon Musk being involved, the current like narrative of like him being, you know, this bad guy in the White House is not, it's not accurate. So let's do our part and not perpetuate it, right? But this is really real. This one is really real. This one is corroborated because if you're not aware of this, Pete Hegseth sent out a text basically on Signal, which is an encrypted format, which, by the way, should tell you everything you need to know with how you should be communicating through things like Signal and using GoDuck and using different things. And by the way, my channel will be sponsored by someone that can encrypt your information so it's not stolen by the government. Stay on brand, Brandon. So we've had, for whatever reason, we feel the need to do some airstrikes in Yemen. They're saying partially because it's connected to the Suez Canal control. I mean, they're definitely about waterways and trade. They're all about the trade part of it. They want to use the military for trade. And they don't want, disruption at home. So those are the two ways that they're going to use the military, right? Well, this dipshit, who is all about talking about DEI and qualified people and unqualified people, basically sent a reply all text to a whole bunch of people, including journalists that are not cleared. By the way, some of them had just recently lost their clearance, to basically say, here are the plans on a fucking text. Like they're going out for a couple of brew dogs after work. Yo, dude, meet me down at Cosmos. We're going to throw back a couple, huh? Got a couple of hot waitresses. There we go. Pete Hegseth is a fall-down drunk. He is a functional fall-down drunk, but he is a fall-down drunk. This dude, and yes, we have a real problem that was hired by Donald Trump, and when we hold them accountable, we're un-American. Pete Hegseth, let me say this, after sitting in military space with military veterans, with people that have lived the life, Pete Hegseth is 100% not qualified to run the Department of Defense. He does not have it. I will tell you, I was sitting with someone who ran the Panama Canal in his advanced age of his late 70s, could go in there and kick ass and take names. He wouldn't put up with any of this horse shit. He wouldn't do any of these. Yeah, they're probably using memes as well. I like that one. All right, so we're going to talk about the astrology here in a second. But the thing I want you to understand is that we have to be critical in our thinking, and we have to stay on both sides critical. We can't, just because it fits our narrative, does not mean that you have to abide by it. You should question it. And again, I want to make it so clear, right, that you need to really recognize and really remember who you are in this. If you are setting yourself with the compass of truth, you need to stay in that. Even if listen, I would love for some of the things that are in that audio bite is pretty funny, but it wasn't real, right? Remember about 10 years ago when The Onion came out and it was hysterical all the time? Well, it's not hysterical all the time anymore because it's become a reality. And we have AI tools right on our phone. I can make myself look like Santa Claus, although I don't have far to go. I have ways I can make myself look like an American patriot, and I can turn them into digital currency. I should do that. I should really do that. What are they called? They're Bitcoins or RFPs or whatever the hell they are. But we have to understand that leading a country has delicate balance. And the reason why we pay attention to the astrology is because there are so many nuanced things that you need to be a highly intelligent person. You need to be an educated person. You have to be a person not driven by ego, but have enough ego to want to do it right. It really is an intricate balance of the human condition. And Donald Trump doesn't have it. He just doesn't have it. And I'm done with talking about how he stole an election. He fucking did it. Sorry. I'm done with talking about how this should have been over when he made fun of a handicapped reporter. This should have been done when he assaulted E. Jean Carroll. It should have been done when he had his own beauty pageant and grab people that he shouldn't have. The Access Hollywood tape where, you grab them because it's what they let you do. All of these things should have been the end of this. It just should have been the end of it. But we lost our moral compass along the way because we thought that by being accepting of people that had a sexual identity different from our own, that we somehow were compromised. And then it created a slippery slope of, or at least it was taken advantage of. I was hard on Lindsey Graham last week, and I continue to be. It's not that I think that Lindsey Graham, first of all, he's a Machiavellian survivalist. He will do whatever he needs to do to get by. That's a sin unto itself. But the sin of himself, his own authenticity, is he is a gay man. He is a gay man. He's gay. He has done more things to hurt the gay community, whatever label you want to put on it, than any other politician that is gay. He should be advocating for this. But instead, he's finding survival in running deep and not being true to himself. That only has so much gas in the tank. Donald Trump is not an authentic person. He's genuine. He's unique. He knows how to turn things into a shit show and capitalize on it. But he's not authentic, right? He's not understanding and never will understand the power that he actually wields right now and the good he can do. Because he can only look at, and again, remember when I said, oh, this goes back to the time where we lied about 9/11, or we lied about JFK, or we lied about insert scandal here. This ended because Bill Clinton didn't say, you know what, I don't deserve to be in the presidency anymore. I've lied to you. You can worship Bill Clinton all you want. Oh, I still like him, and people make mistakes. He didn't do the right thing. He did not do the right thing. Barack Obama did not do the right thing. He should have let this country fall into the recession that it needed to go into. So then we put in laws to help make sure that banks will never grift the way that they did and allow tech bubbles to happen the way they did. People made billions of dollars while other people were left holding the bag. That's what should have been corrected, not bailouts, not buyouts, right? Donald Trump, at the end of his presidency in the last 6 months, was so reckless that that should have been the end of it. Overturning a 50-year precedence because of a law from England and a ruling from 1621, before we were even a country, is an abomination of the system. That should have been the end of it. Marching on the Capitol on January 6th was allowed because it served a purpose that wasn't this country. Now I want to take a look at this eclipse. Now it's happening on here we go. You can hear my voice, but I still want my face on there. Is that wrong? There we go. Ooh, that's no good. What if we did this? Boop. There we go. So this eclipse is happening, I think, at about 5:44 a.m. So I'm a couple of minutes off here. But look at all of this action going on in the first house, everybody. This is put up or shut up time for us as humans, for us as humanity, right? We need to start to recognize that this is going to be about us. You can sit around, you can have as many peaceful protests. You can talk about all of the marches we want to go on, all of the town halls that we want to do. By the way, call out to Elise Stefanik. Thanks again for not showing up to your town hall. What a piece of shit. Elise Stefanik. She's perfectly happy making other people look bad, but she doesn't recognize when she looks bad herself. Get out of my state, by the way. But taking a look at this first house, now this is just insanity that this all fits in the first house. Now, again, I'm not using whole houses. I'm using the placided, which is part of why why so much is fitting in here. But you have everything from Saturn, North Node, Venus, Neptune, Mercury. By the way, Venus and Mercury are in retrograde here. They're doing a conjunct actually yesterday. Then you have the moon, the new moon here, which will kind of get in the way of the sun, blah, blah, blah. And then you have, of course, the sun and then Chiron, all here in the first house. Well, what is the first house but your personal identity? So when these things happen, when eclipses happen, full moon, eclipse, which by the way was the first in the seventh house, that was your personal identity in what you're bringing to relationships, what you're revealing in relationships, what you want to pull out of relationships. This will give you an opportunity to, that eclipse last week was very much about what emotional baggage are you bringing forward? What are the honest conversations you have to have in relationships? Well, here in the first house is what do you have to, who are you? What are your dreams? How do you talk to yourself? Why do you do the things that you do? What are you ready to do for yourself in all of this? This is a gut check event. This eclipse is 100% you figuring out who the hell you are, what your value system is. With Venus in retrograde, you're reviewing things. With Mercury in retrograde, you're deciding how you're going to speak about it. With Neptune hanging on at the 29th degree Anarich, it's about to go into Aries. Holy shit, is that going to be a good time? Right? I think we go into, I think it's the 30th. You're the 29th or the 30th. Is it the 20th? That'll be my next live when we talk about Neptune going into the Aries house, and it's the creator sign. It's the triple zeros. It's the quadruple zeros Aries. It is the creator sign. It is the beginning of all astrology, right? And then of course you've got the Piscean North Node, and then you've got of course Saturn. When Saturn moves into Aries, you're going to feel, by the way, that is where the authoritarianism is going to come in. I'm sorry, I'm getting tired. Authoritarianism is going to come in. That is when there'll be martial law. That's it. That's why astrologers are talking about martial law. By the way, I'm perfectly okay with sitting in the seat of analyzing other astrologers instead of trying to beat everybody to the punch with this stuff, because I think an incredible amount of inaccuracies and disservice happen when you have that many astrologers trying to beat each other to the punch. I'd rather be in the seat of saying, well, this is what it is, and this is why you're seeing it. So go see them and then come here. But this is about owning who you are. This is, by the way, is very much part of the Age of Aquarius. The Age of Aquarius is not just everything landing in Aquarius. It is about moving all of the pieces into place that you understand what your responsibility is in the Age of Aquarius. And the Age of Aquarius is about you bringing to the table the things that you need to do best. In other words, you better know yourself if you're going to enter into a partnership, right? I know full well who I am, but I'm going to review it again because I want to make sure I get it right. When I move into a partnership, when I start doing business with somebody, when I start whatever, I know who I am. I know what boundaries I need to say. I know what I'm going to cave on. I know what I'm going to work on. That's in business is just another way of negotiating where your boundaries are. I get that a lot when I'm traveling. I'm meeting new people, I'm seeing new things, and can you do this? Can you do that? All that stuff. But the astrology of this eclipse is putting, what are your dreams? What do you consider your dreams? What are your value systems? What is your structure? Like, this is kind of your last shot to say, this is how I want my structure to be moving forward. This also runs the risk of putting a lot of people stuck moving forward if they don't make changes. Hello, my baby. Hello, my darling. So, and then I'm going to throw this kind of fun little monkey wrench into all of this too. Pluto is square to the rising here. So this is really much, and by the way, this is mutable energy. This is all even though we've got some high signs in Aries here, this is really about the mutable changes that are coming. This is all about change. All of it is about change, right? We need to personally transform so then we know who we are, because it's coming. And by the way, this is mutually exclusive from what's going on in the government. I actually think this is it is so first house. You can't, if somebody was born on this day, they're going to be so prone to narcissism, or at least Machiavellian approach, that they're going to be like, me, 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 me. Also, me. There is also the chance of this disruptor of Uranus sitting in the second house with finances. I know that the market has recovered a bit, but let me tell you something. There is still, the shoes are going to drop, guys. Before the 1929 collapse, there was the 28 collapse. There's value there. There's value in knowing those things about where we're going to. Yeah. My son has driven me nuts tonight. He's figured out how to request putting things on his phone. So I have work to do when I get home. All right, guys. Listen, I want to thank you guys for coming on board. Look for my note for Shuffle Up and Heal tomorrow night. We're going to get the cards going. Last chance to get into the Tarot Club for the first launch of it. I'm going to actually go over this. We've actually got, so I'm going to let you guys in on something. Next year, and first of all, later on this year, I'm coming out with the Art and Science of Tarot. I'm going to actually be using some of those pages in some of these classes as I use new decks. And by the way, join now Wild Reflections Tarot deck. Should be here any day. We're going to turn them right around, get them out to everybody. This is a really cool deck. I've been working with it. I will be working with it tomorrow night if you want to see it again. But we're also going to be working with that group that sign up for this. We're going to be using this deck with some of the new spreads that I have in my new book coming out. Guys, I'm telling you, it's so much fun. This time next year, you guys are going to be like, he talked a good game about releasing things. And then you're going to be like, holy crap, he put a lot of stuff out. That's what you get when you get a team going, right? Ta-da! So I'm going to see you guys. I can't wait to engage with that and getting all of the All Me channel. It sure is, Jim. But tomorrow night, tune in. We'll be doing Shuffle Up and Heal. We'll dive right into it. I also have some other kind of fun stuff I'm going to be doing, and I think you guys are going to like it. I think you guys are going to really kind of dig where I'm going with this. Look for new guests coming on the podcast, on the channel. I'm going to give you more stuff to see, more things to think about, whether it's about self-improvement, about how to change the world, or really kind of uncovering the truth, so then you gain more information to make better decisions and become the best version of yourself. In the meantime, I'm going to give you guys a heart tap, remind one another that we love and care for each other, and to simply keep going. Exciting stuff coming down the pipe, guys. Thanks so much for being a part of it. Love you all. Keep going.